What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Tuesday Live on St. Thomas Beers. I stole that from my friend Whiskey Crusader Will, that is in the chat right now. Today, I'm really excited to be talking about a distillery that's... These stupid earbuds, you guys. I give up today. Nothing tech-wise is working right, so you'll have to bear with me. A distillery is kind of near and dear to my heart. One of the first distilleries I ever worked with. Let's introduce our friends Alex and Jerez from Balcones.
Hey, Sam.
Howdy, Alex. I'm trying to add Jerez, but there we go. Whew. Everything's going wrong today. So I'm going to focus on just talking today and drinking. I'm going to ignore chat for the most part, just because I'm afraid if I touch one more thing, it's going to all fall apart.
It's the heat, like you were saying. I was just checking to see what our weather was like, and it's 96. Jerez, I don't know what it is and how much of a difference there is. Typically, there's a little bit of difference between where I live. I live about an hour and a half north of the distillery, and oftentimes, the weather can be a little bit different. But it's 96 here, so yeah, it's we're into summer.
It's 96 here too. Yeah, it's warm.
Oh, let me check the weather here. It was like 94 earlier. It was like 8 on my last check right now. 81 right now. Feels like 82, but there's an excessive heat warning in effect until tomorrow night.
There you go.
So, gentlemen, welcome. Hi. Sorry.
No problem.
Thank you guys for accommodating the time. I'm really excited to be chatting with you guys because, as you know, Jerez, when we talked at Whiskey Fest New York, and Alex, when we've chatted, huge fan of the brand and just all-around general whiskey nerd. And I'm excited to nerd out with you guys today. So what order do you want to go in? That's the first question.
Yeah, that is a good question. If we wanted to, we could do the regular single malt and then high plains, and that would lead into lineage pretty nicely, even though we'd be going backwards in proof a little bit. But we could do that. I feel we're down for that.
Yeah, I think that might be better for storytelling purposes.
Let's do it. And then I know you guys said you didn't want to really focus on it, but I did bring the Dremer's Tequila cask because, as you can see, it's a very well-loved bottle, and I needed an excuse to bring it out and drink more of it.
Yeah, that's a fun bottle, fun barrel.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
To your point, I don't know if this will read very well here. It'll be kind of hard to see, but this Glencairn that I'm using is actually the last time that I saw you, Sam, which was Whiskey Fest New York 2019.
Right, but we talked, like, I nerded out with Jerez. We saw each other, but I nerded out with Jerez over, I think it was a Juntos.
Yep.
And then we did some stuff with Dremer's.
Yep. Yeah, we've seen, obviously, with the world of kind of virtual fraternizing. I mean, it really has opened up a lot of really fun avenues for, I think, all of us in many ways. So we've seen each other quite a bit through some stuff with Dremer's and LA, the Bourbon and Whiskey Society and things like that.
But they changed it to Los Angeles Whiskey and Spirits Guild. But yeah, I know exactly the people you're talking about, Vadim and David Donahue.
Yep. But yeah, Balcones whiskey. So we're starting with Texas 1, Jerez?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Got it here.
As you can see, I'm in a production studio, and I have some crew here today. My father and I share a studio space and an office space. And some of our crew are here, and they help set up and everything. And they wanted to try the whiskey, so I'm like, okay, well, which one am I going to pour? Oh, I don't know, I'll pour them Texas 1. Perfect. And they loved it. As you would expect them to, because it's just fantastic.
Yeah, lineage, I guess, is kind of what we're building up to with this order anyway. And while it's not exactly just the one single malt and the high plains combined, to some degree, these two bottles kind of carry, the large majority of the characteristics that we're going for combined into that one. I think. Yeah, I can't remember the last time we blended it, so it's been a little bit.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's honestly, and to be totally transparent, it's been a while since I've had this. We've been doing so much virtual touring, kind of almost exclusively based on lineage, and then every once in a while a couple special releases. And It's been a while since I've had Texas one, and this is quite a quiet moment just to be able to like, oh, whoa, I haven't had this in a while.
Moment of silence for the Texas one. Let's just enjoy it for a second, then we'll talk after.
It's a funny one because it's always straddled, kind of multiple traditions, which I guess American single malt's kind of inherently doing that.
Yeah,
has been doing that. Even when it's not exclusively virgin oak, the large majority of it is. Sometimes it is exclusively virgin oak, but even when there's some refill barrels in there, it's always been about kind of combining the bones of a traditional single malt distillation and liquid, but with a very American approach to the maturation side. So
when you say virgin oak, are you referring to brand new uncharred barrels or just new charred barrels?
New charred barrels, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's funny because, we use refill internally, and of course what it means in the US versus the first fill over in Scotland is going to be the first refill.
Yeah.
But so yeah, predominantly virgin, mostly American. There's always a decent amount of Hungarian and French in the mix, but much smaller proportions.
The barrel and bottle, the independent release from Mario and Dave, the Hungarian oak, the breakdown of the one into the three different oak types. The Hungarian oak was by far my favorite. Yep.
Especially when it's on its own. I mean, Alex runs our single barrel program and he can speak to this, but it does seem like the European oak is, I think it's just exotic enough. We've had a lot of French oak, both with wine and with brandies and stuff. But I think the non-French European oaks are a little bit less common to our palate, and so they can be pretty exciting. The fruit character, kind of the spice stuff, everything's just like somewhere in between. Their vanilla content is not American, but it's much higher than French, and it's not nearly as tannic as French. So yeah, it's always fun. I think it's just a new experience for people to have that isolated like that, and especially virgin barrels.
Gotcha. I'm going back to this myself after not having it for a while. Last time I had it was in October when I was shooting the videos of the 30 days of neat whiskeys and the 30 days of cocktails, and that was the last time I had the one as well. So it's been a hot minute for me.
Yeah, we were just working on the rum finish single malt earlier today, so that's what I've been tasting all day. And so this is an interesting departure.
And is that going to come this way?
I have no idea.
I believe that it is. Yeah, I believe it'll go to California, and then a couple of our other kind of key domestic states. And I think there's actually plans to send a little bit of the single malt rum internationally. We've got some pretty dynamic business growing out there, which is really cool to see at this kind of juncture in time. But yeah, California has obviously got a soft spot in our hearts. It is our second largest state, Texas obviously being our home state where we're from and where we've been.
I hope Texas was larger, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, hey, California is on pace to try to do something in the next few years, to try to upset. But I don't know. Texas, it continues to grow for us, obviously. It is our home state, but California is number 2. It's a fantastic place, a big supporter of Balcones. So more and more of our special and limited releases will make their way out there. So yeah, single malt rum is something they're working on at the distillery right now, and that should make its way out there before the end of the year.
And honestly, we haven't been the best at planning these things out, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, sometimes when we've laid the liquid down. So, Sam, we've always played around a lot. There's always a ton of releases.
Yeah.
And to finally have our core range pretty close to everywhere in the country now. And of course that means people are like, oh, cool, we finally got Balcones. When are we going to get the whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever thing that they
really
missed.
my first question. Let's talk a little bit about, the history and the building of the brand of Balcones. And, that goes back a little bit into the Chip Tate days, of course. I know that might be a little bit of a sore spot, so we're not going to really go into that. But I do want to talk about, the move from one location to the next, to the new current distillery location from the OG location.
Yeah, I mean, the building we're in now, we bought, I want to say it was like 2012, maybe. I can't remember exactly, but we were already out of storage at the old building because the old building was, less than 3,000 square feet. So we bought this building a few blocks away, and we were already using it for warehousing. And yeah, I'm guessing it was somewhere around 2013 or so. I mean, we really just couldn't keep up. So we were always behind on orders. We needed more production capacity. We needed more stuff laid down. And even every time we grew, we could have a year that we doubled sales and we were still like, I think there was one year that I at the end of the year, I just like added it all up, and the orders that were placed and what I fulfilled was about 10% of what I had been asked for that year.
Wow.
And it was just painfully obvious that like, okay, we've got to be able to lay down more whiskey. So yeah, we started plans to kind of renovate the building that we already had, which is huge. I mean, it's like almost 70,000 square feet, four-story tall. Takes up, the building and the parking lot combined are, like 2/3 of the block. And we just had, half of one floor filled with barrels. So started working with Forsyth to design something that could kind of retrofit this old brick building with all the stuff we needed to make the whiskey with. But it was a challenge. Like, it's always scary to go from different equipment to go from the stills you're familiar with and what they do, and go up making the move to steam and new fermenters and different proportioned fermenters and all the ways that can affect esters. I mean, there's a million things that go through your head.
So you not only expanded your physical space, you upgraded your equipment too with newer, better stuff. You said you worked with Forsyth Copper?
Yeah, so Forsyths of Scotland did the still design and building. Alex is pointing to a picture on his little poster there of the coiling line arm that we've got on the top of our spirit stills. But they did. It was really fun. They looked at what we had, and that's their wheelhouse to understand the shape and proportions of a still. And of course, the goal was to make something a lot bigger, but that would give us a similar kind of character that we were used to, and not have too much hiccups with profile and stuff. But it's been a lot of fun. They do good work. So
you left the old stills and fermenters and stuff behind, or you brought them with you and you still use them, and they're like a subsidiary to the newer equipment? Or
no, the old distillery is still down there. It's non-functional, really. We were having problems with water treatment and some other things that we're going to have to get a pretty major overhaul to keep working there.
Gotcha.
The city was pretty cool because they knew we were really close to finishing up this build, so they let us keep working there for a while. But we talk about it every once in a while that it might be fun to go back down there and lay down some more liquid, but it takes a 16-hour day with like 5 guys to make like 2 barrels worth of whiskey, and we can.
Oh wow!
We make like 20 a day here with like 3 people in a much shorter time. So
yeah, no, definitely stick to the new location, please.
And we're still behind. I mean, we kind of stay behind. So we're still always adding shifts and adding more help. And so, yeah, the time's not good yet to kind of take a pause and everybody go down there for a day or two just to barely make anything. So I don't know. We'll see what happens someday. Maybe we get back down.
We still own the building.
Yeah, we still have everything down there. We still own the place. It's just like 5 blocks away from where we are.
So what is the capacity you guys are running at now? How many barrels of whiskey can you do a day?
So yeah, I don't know if we started yet or we're about to start. We've been just doing 5 shifts a week. I think we're about to start doing 6. And it depends on the spirit, but somewhere between 16 and 20 a day. So yeah, you could average it out to about 18 barrels a day. And those are 59 gallon. Those are our 225 liters. So not completely equivalent to a 53 If it was a regular 53 gallon, it probably would be 1 extra barrel or 2, but whatever that adds up to.
We just switched to 6 shifts a week, partly due to Jared's point, kind of demand, but the I guess polar vortex that hit Texas was pretty bad on Balcones distilling, because a lot of the fail safes that we have were based on certain levels of failure and power, but not having gas and electricity really put obviously a lot of people out, but definitely hurt kind of the infrastructure. So the necessary move was kind of always there, and I think kind of jump started what we were kind of putting on hold as long as possible, and I was moving to 6 days a week of distillation. So I think it just started actually, but yeah, Saturdays now as well.
Yeah, we had a lot of pumps and stuff.
Is the worst in recent history, 2020. You've mentioned the polar vortex. I think that was actually happened earlier this year in 21.
Yeah.
But did you guys switch to making hand sanitizer at all? I know that was a big thing. A lot of distilleries switched over to making hand sanitizer, and the FDA came after a lot of distilleries like, hey, you got to pay taxes on that. And it's like, we're fucking giving you free hand sanitizer. Fuck off.
Yeah, we made the switch like most people did, but yeah, it was definitely confusing. There was a brief moment where they weren't sure if the FDA was providing oversight. Obviously, the WHO had provided a couple of different recipes that were allowed, and it seemed like nobody could quite make the decision of who's got to approve the process, who's going to do oversight on this. And yeah, once it was all done, they tried to tax everybody, which was hilarious. We got shut down pretty quick, but
bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Well, let's go into something that is fun. So one thing that I want to highlight with Balcones is that y'all's liquid is young. I mean, the Texas one is like minimum 24 months in oak. That's 2 years. But the color and the flavor is insane, reminiscent of something much older. So do you guys want to talk a little about that and how the Texas climate affects the maturate?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be a youthful exuberance to our whiskey, just because of, like you said, the nature of the climate. It is really hot here, but it's also very cold, and we see a really intense temperature swing consistently throughout the year. So obviously, California, you think of like Palm Springs, where they're going to have triple-digit weather, and then it might go down to 77 degrees at night. Well, we consistently see a lot of those temperature swings, and so with us not doing any climate control in any of our warehouses, we do see a lot of external forces at play that put a lot of stress on the casks. And so we, of course, then starting to work backwards, we have to have high quality distillation. So of course we have the best copper pot stills in the world. We have to have really high quality casks. So the large format casks from ISC, which a few other tiny distilleries also use as well, from ISC, but we use even higher quality casks from their wine cooperage side. We're not creating any shortcuts by looking at maturation that fast. We're actually trying to make sure and ensure that we put out a whiskey that is very delicious for as youthful as it might seem. Because 2 years, 4 years is kind of our window. We are seeing a lot of things come across the blending table, and Jared could speak more to this, but a lot of things are actually creeping up even higher than that. Kind of some stuff that we're finding at the 5-year-old range is really becoming dense and very old world, varnishy, and just the impact of the casks when you find these like beautiful windows of time are taking some of the stuff where Baby Blue used to just be a few months old, and now it's like, hey, this might turn into a straight corn whiskey, and before it was only ever 6 months old, or maybe a year if we were lucky. So there's a lot of innovation within those small windows of time, and I think that's one of the goals, not only with flavor exploration, but cask maturation is something that constantly on the table, literally and philosophically.
I would argue that Balcones is one of the most innovative distilleries, if you want to use that word, craft distilleries, you know, due to the amount of barrels you're producing, obviously. I would definitely wager and argue that Balcones is one of the most innovative, just in even your core range. I mean, your rye, the chocolate malted rye, was one of the first chocolate malted ryes I'd ever seen. It was one of the first Texas ryes I'd ever seen. Then, you know, there's a Brimstone, which is insane.
Yeah, Brimstone is having another moment. I know we're mostly in maybe I'll say appropriately looking at malt, but Brimstone is having a moment recently where it's kind of coming full circle. And but you're right. We experiment with a ton with our malt profile, which again is our bread and butter. Texas one we were just looking at, of course, our flagship single malt and what we're most known for. And I think we're looking at High Plains next, right? Or no? Yeah, High Plains next.
Yeah, we're going to High Plains next.
Which is another fun innovation piece to talk about, especially with the American single malt kind of climate. Looking at, you know, a sense of place with this whiskey, I think is really, really fun to talk about.
Now, before we get too far into, you know, High Plains, let's talk about Texas and Texas whiskey. On the back of all your labels, there is a little, you know, some bottles have like a stamp. The only one that doesn't have it actually is the Dremer's Cask, and my bottle of Texas 1 also doesn't have it. But the certified Texas whiskey stamp. You guys talk to us a little about what you guys are up to, the Texas Whiskey Coalition and the American Single Malt Coalition.
Yeah, the Texas Whiskey Association is just, I don't even know if we're 3 years old yet. I guess we're about 2.5. We may be getting close to 3 years old now. And we kind of had two main goals when we started the Texas Whiskey Association. One was to kind of champion what's been happening in Texas now for a good decade plus, and, you know, help spread that word and also protect actual Texas whiskeys, and do some education for consumers around what being made in Texas actually means. But the other big endeavor we set out on was to start the Texas Whiskey Trail, and get people out to distilleries and just get that face-to-face stuff happening. So
now, you talk about real Texas whiskey. What is real Texas whiskey? So what is real Texas whiskey? And have you guys found anybody trying to be like, oh yeah, I'm Texas, but I'm not actually Texas?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think at its most basic, it's, you know, mashed, fermented, cooked, whatever, distilled, aged, and bottled in Texas. So it's not really that complicated.
No, it's not.
As we all know, one of the biggest selling whiskeys in Texas is not even made in the U.S. and it says Texas all over it, and it's an abomination to. I think most Texans, to find out where some products on the shelf that are covered with cowboy hats and spurs and Lone Stars, being made in Canada or Indiana or wherever it's being made.
I do know one whiskey that is a Texas whiskey. We will, just using the term loosely. I don't want to call anybody out or insult anybody. But they are Indiana, buying from MGP, but I guess they're diluting it in Austin. They're like diluting or proofing and bottling in Austin.
Yeah, there's a decent amount of that going on. As you guys, I mean, same with California, Florida. There's a couple of states that are they're big. They have a ton of people. They drink a lot of whiskey. And, you know, Texas is it's a weird place with its own character, and people are pretty loyal and they're pretty proud of where they're from. And so you can think about it from a marketing person's perspective. Like, if you can slap Texas stuff all over something, you're going to sell it. So there's a lot of bad actors and a lot of shady stuff that goes on, especially in the beverage alcohol business, which all of that isn't our charge. But since we're whiskey makers, we can at least take up that mantle and try to encourage and support the people doing it top to bottom, and do some education both in the bars and liquor stores and with consumers around. Just some of those more subtle nuance of how the sausage gets made, you know.
Gotcha.
But it's been good. The trail was great. Obviously, we got a lot of cool stuff going right before COVID, so it's we're kind of in a pick back up phase and trying to figure out what reopening and getting everybody back out looks like, and kind of reimagining the trail experience. And we're up to, I want to say, man, I haven't looked at the numbers in a little bit, but we started out with I think 8 or 9 distilleries, and we're up to 20 something. So
Wow.
yeah, new distilleries popping up all the time. New places to go and see.
Iron Root, you guys,
Andalusia.
Andalusia.
We've got MKT, Lone Elm. Yeah, I mean, I can't even. Still
Ranger
Austin, Ranger Creek.
Still Austin. I love Still Austin.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of
Such
good work.
nice people over there too.
Yeah, they're fun. Joanna's on the board for the association, so we get to see all those folks. Crowded Barrel, another one.
Yep, Crowded Barrel. Gotta shout out Daniel. You know, people, you know, they don't always appreciate Daniel's goofy nature when he's doing review videos over on the Whiskey Vault channel. But, you know, what he's doing at Crowded Barrel with Emma and, God, I'm having such a problem remembering her name right now. You know, I love what they're doing. Obviously, we have a Crowded Barrel Alliance series release to taste through in a little while.
Yep.
So that'll be fun.
I mean, Daniel's, you know, it's really no one's fault. He's a hard guy to be around. I mean, he knows that. I mean, he's got to know. I'm just kidding. He's probably watching. He watches like all of these things. He usually texts me in the middle of live streams, just kind of gives me a hard time. But I mean, that's a pretty difficult to like persona. Come on, Daniel, what are you doing?
He's always camera ready.
Swami's in the chat from Two Wheels Down. He said, "My God, there's a lot of hipster on this panel."
Oh yeah.
Dang.
And then he also said, "Sorry to do with the hat is killing me."
What? This is an actual cowboy hat. You can't be hipster and cowboy. Is that a thing?
Yes, apparently it is. You're a hipster cowboy, Alex.
Dang.
That's fun.
I'm wearing boots. I'm not wearing like sandals. Look, these are real like it's authentic. I live in Texas.
He does wear that.
Nice
He does
pair
wear
of
that.
fancy looking boots now.
He does do that all the time. He does not. I think
You know, I mean, he walks into the store wearing shorts and sandals, be like, "Howdy, y'all."
he doesn't own shorts, and he doesn't own shorts that I know of. He might have some cycling shorts. That's probably the only shorts he's got.
Yeah, I think so.
I saw you one time. We went to New York, and you did bust out your I can't remember what they're called, but like the contractor, like the crepe sole mock toe boots that you've got. That was the only time I've seen you not in cowboy boots in my life. So
yeah,
he is pretty hip though. He's a very fashionable young man.
Well, I'll have to see that for myself when I come out to Waco finally.
Well, are you? I know we're slated to go to Whiskey Fest this year. I know it's theoretically back on. And I hate to put you on the spot, but do you have plans to go to Whiskey Fest this year?
Except for Florida.
Except for Florida. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, we'll leave Florida. Nothing against Florida, but yeah, we are.
No, everything against Florida.
Yeah, no, we have plans to go to Whiskey Fest New York again. So we'll see you there, and we'll.
You guys should come to the SF one too.
I think we might. Obviously, it's a little bit of ways, but I think it's on the calendar for San Francisco. You'll be there.
I'm hoping to go to it. I'm actually hoping I've got to talk to the Whiskey Fest organizers about maybe getting a little time, like a little booth in the gift shop to do book sales and signings.
Nice. Yeah,
Which would be really cool.
I haven't been at San Francisco in a long time. Got a good buddy out there that I haven't seen in over 20 years, so it'd be really fun to get back out there.
I'm gonna put you guys on the spot. How do I get to book into the gift shop?
Oh, you want to? We can sell the book. Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're talking about in our gift shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should talk after. Yeah, let's talk after about it.
You don't have your own gift shop, do you, Alex? Is there another?
That's what this is. Or sorry, this is.
You're in your gift shop right now.
I'm in my gift shop. Yeah.
I don't have another gift shop.
No,
But
the Balcones
yeah,
got
that's
I mean,
easy
I
to
just
do,
call
man.
it a tasting library behind you both.
No, Jared has a real tasting library. This is just my Balcone. This is all I have. Jared has the real library.
There's
Makes me feel better. This is pretty much all of my Balcones right here, so I'm not as fancy as you guys with all the special bottles.
yeah. Well,
I will say I was really grateful to get the High Plains from you, Alex. Because I think this is distillery only, right?
Yeah.
Which this will actually be a good test. Sam, what bottle do you have? What does it say on the back? The batch code.
HP 20-1.
Yeah.
And Jared, what?
Yeah. That's
the,
last year's batch. Yeah, the second batch.
The one I poured for myself was 19-1. So I selfishly went the different direction. But it's probably a good segue to talk about because I guess we haven't really touched on High Plains. So
we haven't. We've been talking, just gibbering amongst ourselves.
So yeah, Jared, what is High Plains?
Yeah. So to tie in the order that we're going in here. Our Texas 1 single malt is made with Golden Promise, Scottish barley variety. It's property of the Simpsons family. The Simpsons family also does malting, so you can get Golden Promise from Simpsons. And one other maltster that they let malt it is Thomas Fawcett. So there's two people you can buy Golden Promise from, and we get it directly from Simpsons. We've been using it from day one, and like I said earlier, it's the majority of the maturation is virgin oak, and kind of an intentional nod to the Scottish barley variety that has kind of been left to the wayside for higher yielding varieties, modern stuff that just gives you more alcohol per pound. Nobody moved away from it because it wasn't delicious. There's just newer varieties that can give you more alcohol per pound, which basically means they have more starch, less other stuff, but all that less other stuff is very flavorful, wonderful stuff that you want in a fermentation and a distillation, and therefore in a whiskey. So we intentionally chose a grain that is kind of harkens back to the 60s, 70s, 80s of Scotch production that's kind of been lost. But then we treat it in a very familiar American way with a lot of virgin oak, a lot of American oak on it. So all your normal bourbon and rye, vanilla and caramel and all that stuff are in there. You get a lot of spice and cinnamon and clove. Then now we're moving on to High Plains. High Plains is the end result of a multiple year long project between Brandon Aid at Blackland Malting in north of Austin, working with Texas A&M Agricultural School to develop a barley variety that would work in Texas. At the time, there was no beverage grade, no malting grade barley being grown in Texas. But they were working on a variety that could be both heat and drought resistant. Took years, took about 4 or 5 years of planting before they had a viable crop.
Wow.
And we bought almost all of that. A few Texas breweries did some special releases with some of that malt that came out from that first batch, that first year. And we've been trying to buy it up ever since as much as we can. There's now multiple kind of small craft maltsters in the state. There's been experiments with a bunch of different farms, and I want to say 4 to 6 different strains at this point have been laid down. So in some ways, we've barely scratched the surface. I mean, we've just barely begun to figure out what places, which strains at what places. And then, of course, we've using different maltsters and using some floor malting, some drum malting. So the amount of variables on this project is still like completely out there. I wouldn't say any of the stuff that we've got on hand is intended to be representative of where this is going, because we're still in the kind of research phase. But so this is the second release. We've done 2 at the distillery. The goal was never really to sell it by itself necessarily. But the first year was in virgin. So I basically, the first blend, I treated it just like the one. So I wanted people who bought that first High Plains release in 2019 to be able to put that next to the 1 single malt and have really the only variable that was new and different be the barley variety. Very similar treatment. And then last year we were working on a lineage blend, which uses a lot of the Texas malt. And I just happened to find 3 or 4 barrels, refill barrels that I really liked, that I just couldn't bring myself to put into a really big blend. So I set them aside, and I don't even think we had labels. I don't know. I don't remember all the details, but we didn't have it scheduled, but every once in a while that does happen, and you just find some cool stuff. So it ended up being a small 3-barrel blend, and distillery only for now. We've talked a little bit about whether it should be added to the line, and that basically these 3 could kind of be the family, the Scottish barley, the kind of our classic approach, the refill high plains, and then lineage. But the lineage does eat up a lot of all the stock. So to make that blend, a lot of the components go into it that would be really fun to showcase in small little lots. But
I'd be really curious to see you guys do a Texas terroir bottling. It just seems like you guys would be the perfect people to do it, maybe in collaboration with Daniel down at Crowded Barrel and Rob over at TX. Texas grain, Texas water, Texas wood.
We have, I think Alex knows where I'm going with this. We went down the Texas wood route probably back in like 2014 or so. And we had some barrels made. Independent Stave made us some barrels out of some Texas oak. And pretty interesting project that's still not wrapped up. I don't really exactly know where that whiskey's going, but those barrels do not taste like anything I'm used to.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Oh, I love that. Now you've teased me. I want to taste that.
They're super weird.
I don't know how much we probably haven't talked about. I mean, not that we've really even said that much just now, but we haven't really talked about it that much, just kind of even internally, much less externally, because it's still in such a, I don't know what part of the peak or the valley of that.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the first fill is not going to work on its own. Not too dissimilar to what Westland figured out using the Gary oak. I think they did their first release that was 100% and then figured out pretty quickly that it's such an intense, strong, specific flavor that all those Garyana releases have a small portion of that, of the virgin ones. They might have a higher portion of refill, but we had the same experience with the live oak, man. It's crazy. And Independent Stave had a lot of breakage. It just didn't behave how they were used to. And so a lot of the staves broke in the shaping. And every time I jokingly bring it up and say, yeah, I'm gonna find you some more trees and get a bunch of those more made, they pretty much just say like, no, we're not doing that again. So I should check on those. We'll get into this dynamic when we get into Dusk and Dawn here in a little bit, but there is a lot of fill and then refill and then refill and refill, and especially when it's something you haven't played with before, to watch the casks behave differently at every round is super informative. And a lot of times we use multiple rounds to put the blend together, and then you can really dial in. So I know what that live oak stuff tastes like. It's super specific. I don't really want to just put like one in a blend with 10 other things and kind of dilute it down and say, hey, this is a release that's all about the live oak. So what we keep doing is like we get that whiskey out, we put more in, we get more out, we put it back in. So at some point they'll be used up enough, I think, that we can use all of these rounds of filling and kind of dial in kind of the aggressive parts and hopefully turn it into something kind of harmonious and balanced. But I don't know when that's going to be. We don't really have that many. We only have 3 of those barrels, but
it'll end up being some odd like 6th fill live oak release, because everyone's gonna be like, what about their other things, the other fills? Like, we don't know.
Yeah,
because it's wonky.
Or maybe by the 6th to 8th, then we can put the 3 first fills in. It'll be okay.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
But then there'll be like 30 barrels in it, 30 barrel blend. But anyway. So High Plains in some ways, I didn't blend it to profile similar to like Mirador, which is very, very fruity, honey, floral. I wanted it to be a little grassier and kind of evoke the dry grain in the field a little bit. But in the sense that it's all refill ex-bourbon. And I think these were almost all our barrels. I don't think there was any like ex-Kentucky barrels. I think these were all reused.
I like the High Plains.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit of getting used to. It takes some air to open up.
Yeah. And it's a funny one. I mean,
Yeah, no, when I first had it, when I first did I did a review on it. I think I sent it to you guys. If I posted, I think I posted. I don't remember. I gotta take a look at that after the stream. It was really weird and like earthy and herbal.
Hell yeah.
And now it's like opened up and it's a different kind of earthy. That was more like minty mentholy.
Mm-hmm.
This is more like, it's on the sweeter side. It's got some honeysuckle or honeycomb. Actually, I need a little bit more.
There's a lot of citrus, a lot of zesty stuff going on there.
Yeah, I tend to think this is like kind of like the picture that I think of is being in kind of like a wide open grassy field with a big breeze, to where it's very aromatic. There's a lot of rich grassy quality to it. It is much more earthy, whereas I think Texas One has much more of that deeper kind of dense wood component to it. But there's always that really rich kind of like stewed apricot quality. This is just me with Texas One, but with especially the 2020 batch of High Plains, I thought it was really grassy in like a really nice way, very delicate, not like someone just mowed the lawn, but more like field grain, bread, kind of like toasted bread in a really fun and inviting way, where it does, I believe, accentuates the grain in a lovely way. That's I go back and forth. I know I was saying that I've been pouring. This is the original release, which is the Virgin Oak variation. It's kind of hard to show you. This one's considerably darker, a lot more rich wood sugar, and I go back and forth on the day on if I prefer this one, the 2019 inaugural release, or the 2020. But I think that's kind of the fun of it, is the exploration batch by batch, to be able to find which one you like, which one you love, and think of them differently and together. And that's
everything I like that you guys do. I'm looking at the backs of these bottles. Single malt is 20-1. High Plains is 21 or 20-1, and then the lineage is 20-3. So I like that you guys are so open about the batches, because that just means that there's gonna be some variation batch to batch. I mean, they're not single barrels, and you guys are gonna blend it for consistency, but there'll be some variation.
Yeah. I mean, the consistency dilemma is kind of a tricky one. It's kind of like figuring out what really is the essence, or what are the kind of non-negotiable parts of an expression, and then figuring out what is negotiable and what you can play with, so that you can, you're kind of anchored down to the center concept, but you can kind of play around the edges of it and dabble. And it seems like a shame if you sit down at the blending table and you pull all the malt that should be ready from a certain range that fits, this kind of barrel, this grain, this age, that goes into fill in the blank product, and say there is just a really beautiful herbal thing that isn't usually there, that's just a little more prominent this time around, or it's very fruity but it's more orchard than it is stone, or whatever it is that you find. It seems like a shame to not be able to sit down at the table and let the whiskey kind of guide the process a little bit, based on where it's at and what's ready and what it's doing at any given stage. So we probably give ourselves a lot more flexibility in that area than some, and definitely more than you would at one of the really big distilleries, where kind of consistency is everything. You want to have Jameson on every different continent and not notice the difference, right? And my comparison is a little harsh, but to me that's the whiskey equivalent to like the culinary experience of something like a Chili's or something, like just that demand for absolute really tight margin of error for consistency. Absolute
singularity almost is the word. That's not quite it.
Both as a drinker and as a producer, that's just not fun. I mean, that's just there's nothing compelling about that to me.
If you would, Jared, would you walk us through a little bit your process for blending? You talk about the blending table. And that's something I always love to hear about, is the the maker's process for, well, making?
Oh man, I don't know if there's like a system. There's 2 or 3 of us in the room these days. Gabe Richard, I don't know if you've met Gabe. He's kind of my right-hand guy. He's our warehouse manager and kind of oversees the still house operations.
We've met at least virtually over the last year.
He's the guy that knows what we got in the warehouse, what's coming up, tracking special projects. If we lay some weird thing down, or like we made a batch with wine yeast, he's the one that sets the reminder to like check it in a year and a half or 2 years or whatever. And then Johnson Haygood has just recently kind of at the beginning of this year just became kind of full-time part of the blending crew. And he handles a lot of the QC with the more traditional like quality control role. So he's doing a lot of sensory evaluation on new make with the guys that are operating the stills, and helping us come up with better systems for kind of keeping track of our own tasting notes and all that stuff. So that's the rest of the crew. Alex is in there a lot, helping us pick out single barrels and doing kind of some sensory assessment on things for the single barrel program. It's tough to say there's a process. I mean, obviously there's a process, but it's always a little bit different. And we kind of take turns taking lead on blends too. So what were we working on most recently? We were working on a Texas pot still bourbon blend. And I intentionally stayed out of it until the very end. And they were having some frustration, and there were some things they were liking and not liking. And I didn't come in until the very last day or two to try and kind of help put the finishing touches on what they were working on. But it's really nice to have that fresh perspective and not get too deep in the woods. And to take turns doing that as well. And you can kind of be slugging it out and think this is going in a great direction, just to have someone tell you that it's very bitter, or that it's very off profile in a specific way that, you've just been super zoomed in on the details, and someone's looking at it from a much bigger perspective and can kind of freshen things up, or come in and tell you when you're really frustrated, like, guys, this is actually really good. It just needs a few things, But so we usually have, I don't know, Alex, we probably got something like anywhere from like 400 to 800 or 900 samples out. Our blending room's pretty large. We have a lot of space in there. So the barrel samples get pulled, and depending on what we're working on, the process can be really different. So like for the single malt rum release, there's only like 40 barrels to look at anyway. So those I'll look at every single one individually and start kind of trying to make groups. If it's a product that you already are super familiar with, what the pitfalls are. Let's take Texas 1, for example. Some barrels you're going to smell them, and it's like, this is quintessentially like, this is exactly that. So obviously you can build around those. And then there's ones that are maybe have a little bit of a jagged edge in any given direction. It's fruitier than the blend normally is. It's spicier than the blend normally is. It's more tannic than normal. Whatever it is, it's more solventy. So you can make those piles of those kinds of barrels and label them, and then just figure out how much of those kind of to accentuate the main base with. And a lot of it just keep going and going. It's not, blending isn't super linear. So you can combine things that seem to make sense, that they're going to like this plus this is going to equal this, and it doesn't always do that. So,
sure.
Yeah, you just you try things out, and you might get your proportions a little wrong, take a few more out, put a few more in. It's a lot of back and forth. We used to do it a lot faster, and we would also drink a lot more. We're trying to be a little healthier human beings at these days, and kind of limit our consumption a little bit and be smarter. And
so let's say you do have those 800-900 samples. You're obviously not tasting all 900 samples, right?
No, not me. Somebody probably does. There's sometimes where we might take a whole day of distillation and treat it like a lot. We might group up a group, if there's, like I said, if there's 18 barrels from one day, we might group that up into a vial together and then check it. But almost as often as not, there's something that's not quite right about it. So you still end up going back through the group and grading the group and taking some things out. It's a really rewarding process, but I think from the outside, it always looks really cool to walk in there. And the running joke that I've been asked this question before plenty of times, but like, don't walk in the blending room and tell them just like, man, this is the coolest job ever. Like, oh, they could pay you to drink. Like, drinking for work is a really, and also that level of intense, like presence and intentionality and thoughtfulness while you're trying to do it is like really exhausting. It couldn't be more different than just like having a drink with a friend, like with some music on the front porch.
Obviously, when I drink for work, it's nowhere as intense as what you're doing, but it's still it's work. I love it. And it's fun, but it's still work. Yeah, we get to drink and talk about whiskey for a living, but it's still work. There's days where it's like, I really don't want to do this right now. Okay, what do I have to review? Or, I gotta go do a presentation for this.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, it's nothing compared to what you guys are doing where, for you, Jared and Alex, it's like, we have like 50 samples to review from this like one batch of barrels to, go in and make baby blue.
Yep, and it never ends. We're pretty packed. There's not a whole lot of time in the schedule every year for time off. But we try to limit ourselves to about 20 hours a week of sensory work. You're probably not that much use after that anyway. You're probably not very helpful if you're going to try and pull out 6-7 hours a day of doing that crap. But
yeah,
and luckily, like I said, our range is so varied that it's never the same. It's kind of, you're jumping from thing to thing to thing. We do something like, I don't know how many releases we got this year, Alex, but it's probably at least 20 unique.
Yeah.
Some of those products get done 2 or 3 times a year, but 20 unique expressions. So that's like 3 years running of about that number. So there's always some cool,
unique expressions and cool releases. Any plans for something like Juntos to come back? Because I never managed to get a bottle, and it was my favorite Balcones ever.
Oh, well, I'm sure I've got some stashed for you. No, it's tough to figure out which things you do them because the project's really interesting. Kind of like with the French Oak, the Froke release, we've done that, I think, 3 times and 2 years in a row. But before that, it was like 4 years apart. We just did the second release of Bach, and I think we have one more planned. But after that, we'll pretty much be done with the barrels that we've got, and we're not laying down more. So there are things that, sometimes a new core thing shows up from kind of experimentation, but sometimes they feel like they feel more special left to just kind of stand alone. I can't say we won't do Juntos again. There's no specific plan to, but then again, we're constantly thinking through like, oh man, we always do fill in the blank. We've been doing it every year. Like maybe let's take a year off. Maybe let's insert something else in there sometimes. So
yeah,
it's that side of the business is weird and can be frustrating, but we're really fortunate with our consumer base that, the folks that buy and drink our whiskey are super supportive. When we do weird one-offs, those are some of the only things that you're just like, that's gone. Like if that, when that comes out, it's gone.
Like so you did if I remember, it was like a Brujeria release or something a couple of years back.
Yeah, Brujeria and Hechiceros those were part of the 10th anniversary. So actually, here's one. This is Hechiceros. If I turn it, it's not gonna look very good just because the glare. But Hechiceros and then Brujeria kind of came in a sibling box and presentation where it was a port cask, and then the other was the sherry cask release. And those were complex animals in their own. But
I had also to try them again with Daniel. One of the benefits of going down to the Wizard Academy to hang out or go through their whiskey program is you get to drink anything you want that's in the vault or sometimes in Daniel's office, and that's where I got to try those. They were delicious.
Thanks. Yeah, that's another good example of, sherry and port are pretty ubiquitous in Scotch finishing. I don't want to hang my hat on something like that, but it was really a fun process to play around in that area.
And honestly, I feel like I would kind of be disappointed in you if you did be like, let's, do these things. Like, I'm really proud of this. Like, be proud of it, but like everybody does that. TX just did that, I think, with a sherry cask. And yeah, it's cool, it's fun. But I was telling a friend today, he's like, I want to do another single cask for, my Facebook group. I'm thinking this, and I'm like, avoid sherry casks. They're delicious, but everybody does them.
Yeah.
You're talking about maybe a Tokai wine cask. I'm like, now that would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should. I don't want to skip over lineage too fast. We should talk about.
No, I'm about to get to it.
Back to.
We get to Dusk and Dawn.
Yeah, we should remember to talk about cask maturation with Dusk and Dawn and kind of the state of
No. I have the samples, little vials right here, thanks to a friend in Texas.
Nice. We didn't make that much of it, Dusk and Dawn, but Lineage you can find in California, which is really cool. This is
it's the newest release in California. And I saw some of my friends who are, big time whiskey influencers doing this to build your own blend from Lineage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I forgot we had done that. We sent out those like kits with like kind of the components. So the two other single malts we've had so far have built up to this a little bit. So Lineage is a mix of both the Scottish barley that we use in the one and this newly available just the last few years Texas grown malted barley. And we age both in virgin oak and in refill. Most of the refill expressions we've done on the Golden Promise side, most notably Mirador, which is our no virgin all refill kind of special release that we do with the Golden Promise. The second year of High Plains was all refill with the Texas malt. The first year was the virgin. So this has all four of those, and the blend leans slightly heavier on refill. I think it's about 60-40 hovering in that range of 40% virgin and 60 refill. But virgin oak is kind of punches above its weight. So even at 60-40, the refills don't dominate. But we definitely were trying to kind of lighten that up and kind of find that middle ground. And then you get the grain notes and the fruits you get and the spices. You were already talking about kind of some of the hay, herbal stuff, floral stuff. Anytime you're adding multiple strains like varieties of barley like that together, they've got their own properties, and now you just added layers of other things. So this was a fun project to blend, and it's still really fun. We've only done 4 batches of it, so we're still learning a lot about how to get how to kind of guide this expression to the best version of itself. But we also very much wanted to we dropped the proof a little bit. A lot of our stuff's 100 plus, but we wanted to
47.
Yeah, we wanted to make something that was as easy to get into as possible. To my palate, there's a little bit more of kind of like a little more straightforward Highland kind of vibe to it that we don't have with all the virgin oak in the one. Mirador's definitely got like 1 foot planted in homage to Speyside, and I kind of wanted something that's still a little more robust to get some funk in there, to get some kind of hints of sulfur and phenolic stuff, but not have it overpowered by all this virgin oak.
I definitely feel like sulfur and phenolic. I don't personally see like the link back to the Highlands. I don't. Again, just me. My palate doesn't say, "Oh, this reminds me of Scotch." It still reminds me of American single malt, but I definitely get that interesting kind of sulfuric, oily fruitiness.
Yeah, there's a lot of fruit, and fruit's a little bit darker. There's still a lot of honey. Once again, the honey's dark though. But yeah,
it's like a nice, like really clean honey. Yeah.
Kind of the internal joke, like behind closed doors, was I really think American single malt has a lot of runway ahead of it. I think that we have some really amazing producers in the U.S. making single malt, and we're kind of thinking intentionally about what are the things that keep people out of the category. And of course, a lot of your entry level stuff for American single malt might be $60-$70. And a lot of it's higher proof, and a lot of it may be pretty robust, or it's smoky, or whatever. And so yeah, we kind of set out to intentionally make something that, in our mind, it's the bottle equivalent of, hey, this is affordable. Hey, the proof is lower. It's a pretty rounded off. It's it's not really extreme in any way. It's well put together. It's very, very nuanced and subtle, but it's not offensive. It's not going to like, you got to be some like nerd cask strength, high proof hazmat drinker to like get it. But in some ways, it was kind of like
refer to myself, at least in my head, sometimes as a high proof whore.
Yeah. I've never said that about you, to your face. But yeah, in some ways, it was kind of like this is the invitation card, you know, like, hey, we're having this party over here that is American single malt. You're invited. Come in. Let's make it as easy as possible for people to kind of dip their toes in it. And it's cool. I've seen. I mean, a bunch of other American single malt producers are doing similar things. I think in kind of a concerted effort to just really reach out instead of waiting for everyone to come to us and discover it, to kind of try to find where people are at. I think the Strain of Hands is the Blue Peak is a great example. Lower proof, you know, a lower price. Western just kind of overhauled their flagship.
I quite liked it. I had it the other week and I actually quite liked it. I was surprised. I'm like, oh wow, this is actually better than I thought it was going to be.
Which one? The Strain of Hands or the West one? Yeah. But I think everyone's kind of having that realization that we're going to have to like take that first step to meet people that are like, no, just drink bourbon and rye or whatever it is, whatever's the issue. If we wanted to kind of come dabble in this area and in this yard, that we're going to have to invite them pretty hard. So that's one of the main things we were hoping to achieve with this one, is to just get it in the hands of people. The
other big issue is that people are like, oh no, you can only make bourbon in Kentucky.
Yeah, that's a whole nother fun thing to navigate. Fortunately, most of our eggs are in the single malt basket. But when you look at the beauty of the price point of this, it's so intriguing. You know, at $39.99 roughly. Obviously, you're going to see.
I'm sorry, how much?
Yeah, so this is the target retail pricing is $39.99 for lineage. So at 3 years old,
nothing.
Yeah, right. So that's the goal, is maybe that reaction, but you know, is something that's so inviting from maybe a distillery you've heard of, that you saw corn whiskey baby blue, you're like, I don't know if I want that, and then you saw Texas one single malt that, you know, generally is around $69.99. And folks are, you know, that's way out of my price point for, oh wait, this is an American single malt. It's not Macallan. Ooh, I don't know about that. Right. So for us, this is something to bring everybody in, and then be able to have that conversation about, different mash bill variety and the softness here to the price point and the proof is inviting, while still having a full, rich glass. That we're seeing kind of explosive growth with this, and really, we hope that it invites people to, I believe, you know, try not only Balcones single malt, graduate up to some of our cask strength, their special release whiskeys like Dusk and Dawn, and Juntos, Sam, but also try other American single malts that maybe before they were hesitant on.
Oh, Juntos.
Yeah.
For everyone watching and listening who doesn't know Juntos, Juntos was a distillery exclusive. And at Whiskey Fest New York, Alex and Jerez brought a bottle with them. And when I introduced myself, and I'm like, hi, I'm Sam, I'm a whiskey nerd, here's what I do, blah, blah, blah. They're like, oh, you might like this special pour that we have under the table. And they let me try the Juntos, which, if memory serves correctly, cask strength peated tequila cask single malt, right?
Not peated cask. It was French oak. Yeah, it was the French oak.
There.
Yeah, virgin French oak. I want to say it was like I don't remember how old it was. And then it's been actually finishing. Is a weird word, because I think it spent more time in the finishing barrel than it did in the original barrel. It was like a year and a half in the first cask, and then like two and a half or three or something in the tequila barrel. But stuff like that's weird. You never know when it's going to land. But we found it endearing enough that we wanted to at least put out some of it. And then same thing, you release it and it comes out and it's in the tasting room, or a little bit goes to distribution or whatever. And then someone freaks out, and I had a guy that was like, down in the bar, and I was leaving work that day, and he's like, oh man, with the Juntos, man, you guys now you raised the bar. Now all the rest of the malt's got to get better. And I was like, really? You're such a weird dude that is like, that's your thing.
That's the bar. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I was going to say something.
Let me again point out the fact that my Dremer's used tequila cask, the True Blue, that bottle's almost dead compared to every other bottle of Balcones I have. not counting the lineage, which I just picked up thanks to the West Coast Dram Barbara. That True Blue is almost gone. There's just something about your juice in tequila that's just like different level, man.
Thanks. Yeah, we've got another couple of tequila releases planned. I don't know for sure if that one's going to happen this year or not, but we've got a big corn whiskey tequila, a larger release. I don't know how far it's going to go or how many barrels are going to end up in it, but those early experiments with tequila, we really liked them. So we've kept messing with it. We'll see where it goes. But
you guys, for those of you who weren't on that Zoom call, it was actually early on in COVID. Yeah. Charlie Prince, the president of Dremer's Club, was out in Austin anyway, so he arranged to come meet up with Alex and Jared and pick a cask. And he ended up picking 3, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't with me. It was Alex and Gabe. It really was
Gabe.
I was out of town on vacation, which I don't do often, and it literally was like when COVID hit. Yeah. Like the week I was gone was when it went from like rumors on the news to like basketball games were starting to get shut down, and yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah,
I knew it was serious when all the whiskey shows got shut down.
Yeah, that was right in that window of time where Charlie with Dramers ended up having a really cool and very engaging and inviting article that I believe was written by maybe Whiskey Advocate. And in the photo, none of us were wearing masks. We were all very close together, and we had to press the issue of please let them know that this photo was taking, it had taken place at the distillery. Yes, you can tell we were like in the fermenter yard.
Yeah, it was like 3-4 months ago.
Yeah. It was right when it was like the very beginning of March. So in Texas, it hadn't. Yeah,
the disclaimer that this ad was made safely. We were.
Yeah.
TV show I was watching, Manifest, had that at the end of it. It said it was safely filmed following COVID protocols, and I'm like, I dig that. I respect that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. That was part of it. That was the first live stream, inadvertently the first live stream event that Dramers did was at Balcones. So that was a good long hangout, and we grabbed a couple barrels. Well, I guess Dramers technically grabbed a couple barrels, and that was one of them, which is a very cool barrel. And we do really like tequila. I think part of it is the exploration of flavor, the earthiness, kind of bringing you down to earth with a lot of the obviously processes of tequila, but in mezcal, we're still trying to convince Jared to do a pachuga at the distillery, or Jared's inadvertently convincing us to do a pachuga, and we just.
Or something like it, whatever whatever the Texas version of that would be. Get some persimmons and a brisket.
Brisket.
Yeah, you get a brisket and some tomatillos and some persimmons and I don't know, some blackberries in there. We could do that.
Yeah. But no, one of the things I wanted to say is that we all, from then on out, after that barrel pick event that we did with you guys, as a member of Dramers, I say this, every other barrel pick was, well, where's the tequila cask?
Yeah.
And we all started making fun of Charlie for it because he loves his mezcals and his tequilas.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes he would ask, he was like, all right, this is amazing, but where's the tequila cask? So it became a thing where it's like, all right, who's going to say it before Charlie this time?
Yeah. And now anybody wants to like do Dramer's business, better get some stuff in tequila,
Yeah. Which ends up being really kind of funny and ironic because it was one of the things that we were like, we really like this barrel. It's kind of a in-house favorite, but we don't know currently. But I don't know. Here, try this, and yeah, Charlie was a huge fan of it. So we're glad it ended up in your hands, Dramer's hands. I'm glad it lives on in kind of a national, and I think he said he sent some bottles overseas, last year.
International even.
Yeah.
He pretty much only wanted to see like weird shit. So we have a list of like weird stuff. So we pull it out.
If I love that fact you have a list of weird shit.
Yeah. If that's what if that's their jam, if that's what they're looking for.
I was telling my friend this earlier. I'm like, do something weird. Everyone does, like sherry bomb casks, or ex-bourbon casks for their single barrels. Do something weird is going to get attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
He
guys
picked
want
a
to
lot of
move
the
on
weird
to the
ones.
next bottle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? You want to do the Dusk Dawn? Do you want to do the Tequila, or do you want to do the Crowded Barrel?
I don't have. Actually, I think I know where it is. I was trying to find the Dreamers before we jumped on, and then with the technical difficulties, I didn't get back up.
Well, get back up.
Yeah, I'm gonna get back up. Alex, jump into the Dawn and Dusk, and I would do them in that order. But you can walk through what? Yeah, Dawn first, and then I'll be right back.
Give me 1 second, Alex.
Yeah.
I got to clean my glasses here a little bit.
A little water.
Topo Chico, my personal water preference.
Nice. Some bubbly.
Love me some bubbles.
These are since I have the bottles here, I'll show the we're tasting Dawn then Dusk, so this might look out of order, I guess, but these are kind of again sibling releases that we launched at the same time. You can see they're both again 100% single malt. I guess you can't really see. There is a bit of a color difference, and that's because that Dawn, we're tasting them kind of in reverse order depending on how you think about it. Dawn is the second fill. Yeah, Dawn is second fill. Dusk is first fill in the same Texas Madeira casks from a winery near Houston called Hack. So they legally are allowed to make and label that their dessert wine is Madeira. So
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty cool. So we've got Gabe and Jerez specifically went down there in partnership with them and collected quite a few casks from them. Again, ex Madeira casks. So we took them and put malt new make in these casks, and part of that process was then emptying them and then putting new make in there again. So that's when we say first fill and second fill. There was Madeira, and then there was malt new make, transferred malt new make out, got fresh malt new make, and put them in. So that's where the really cool, juxtaposition here is that at one point on the blending table, these could have lived as one large release, and it was probably going to be called the Hack single malt. But the really cool and unique thing is that separating these first fill versus second fill, you really got to see a picture of that cask maturation, especially in the world of where, like you said, and we still do it. We like it, but in a world of where everybody is using and exploiting something that's not sustainable really that much anymore, and it is sherry finishing.
Yeah. And like you said, use it. We all like it. I love it. I'm not trying to bash on sherry finishing. It's
right.
also harder and harder to get, sherry barrels from Spain.
Yeah. Very, very, very expensive. And so for us, it's a really fun exploration. So kind of going back to earlier when you were talking about kind of local terroir. So this is kind of part of that exploration, is looking at working with the wineries locally in order to dig in with what they're producing, and of course support locals as much as we possibly can. Support local establishments that are producing really good and really cool wines that are adding to that category, which is what we want to do. And so to create Dawn and Dusk and it be kind of that storytelling process of cask maturation for us is really, really fun. And so with Dawn, it's much lighter, much more fruity. Still, there's a presence of Madeira to it, but Dusk is much more brooding, much darker, more the heavy focus on the Madeira finishing quality. And so tasting them side by side is really fun. We know not everybody's gonna be able to do that because whiskey can be expensive, especially in order to recoup any sort of finances from something like dessert wine finishing. But these are really fun. They're both 4 years old. Dawn is 58% ABV, and then Dusk is
55.5.
Yep. So a little bit of difference in proof. Is this your first time? This is probably your first time tasting.
No, second time. I did try them once before.
Second, okay.
Just because I had the samples and I wanted to try them. But honestly, I wasn't as big of a fan of them as I am this time around. I think that I just need to open up a bottle of Balcones, pour out a couple ounces, and just let the air just come into the bottle. Because I feel like just a little bit of oxidation and air really does wonders for the Balcones whiskeys.
Yeah, these are again, we've kind of gone through a little bit of a journey, but these are definitely going to be the highest proof of what we tasted through so far. So again, these sitting at 55.5 and 58%. Dawn and Dusk are quite a bit higher, a little more volatile. So a little bit of water certainly doesn't hurt either. Just to kind of
actually High Plains 57.
Yeah, High Plains
57. Yeah. I guess I was drinking 2019
last year's.
High Plains. Yeah, which is
or 2 years technically. Eric Elvigon, I think is how you pronounce your name. Please correct me if I'm wrong. He says they're both great.
Nice.
Eric, I'm about to dive into the Dusk in a minute. I'm just, appreciating the Dawn right now. But so far, Dawn is really tasty.
He's got a basketball hat.
Eric's a good dude. He's in, speaking of Westland, he's up in the Pacific Northwest. He's a big Balcones fan. Really nice guy. Really great guy.
And he's got a basketball hat.
So I don't know. Maybe he likes basketball. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe that's like anti-basketball because he's flattened the basketball.
Would that be ironic? Is that what that is? Is that ironic? Yeah.
And real quick, while I just have your attention for a moment. Thank you for tuning in today and watching. Please remember to hit that like and subscribe button and smack the notification bell like your bartender is smacking the tin. Bars are reopened in Los Angeles as of 12 a.m. today. Technically yesterday, like 12:01 a.m. today. Wow. I go back to work tomorrow. It's been over a year since I've been behind the bar, and I am really excited to go back to work. So if you're in Los Angeles, come see me at the Daily Pint tomorrow. I'll pour you the most mediocre beer you've ever had and make you a very mediocre old-fashioned. All jokes aside, though, please support your bars and restaurants. They've been shut down for the better part of the year. As Alex was saying earlier, support local, buy local if you can, and support small independent liquor stores too. So if there's a bottle you want from Balcones, who's your distributor? Are you guys with RDC nationally?
No, we're with Southern Glaciers nationally.
Southern nationally. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So support them. Go to the local liquor store and be like, hey, I want this bottle of Balcones. It costs about this much, and this should be 60. Please order it in for me. And if the liquor store knows what they're doing, which hopefully they do, we'll be more than happy to order it in for you because, it's money in their pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Jared,
I couldn't find my Dremer's bottle. I don't know where it is, but
I drank it.
Is it in the cabinet behind you, maybe?
No, it's not in there.
Those are all non-Balcones bottles.
There's no Balcones in there. Well, there might be one. There shouldn't be any. So you walked them through Dusk and Dawn. I'm guessing you gave them the basic.
We're just
rundown.
on Dawn. We haven't gotten to Dusk yet.
Yeah, just the basic rundown of kind of this has been it's been a really fun with the world of or the lack of sustainability with sherry. I think this has been a really cool peek into something that you guys have been exploring for quite some time on where you can explore, especially dessert wines, because we do have quite a few wineries in Texas, as I know a lot of states do, but there's a handful of fantastic ones here. And the really cool thing about Hack, of course, again, is that they can legally produce Madeira. Wow. And so the fun thing is to try these side by side because of that first fill versus second fill. Obviously, Jared, you went and hand selected these barrels.
Yeah, we started in about 2016 on a deep dive into trying to find preferably estate grown, but at least Texas grown grapes that Texas wineries were making dessert wine out of. We tried pretty much everything we could find, and we narrowed it down to about 4 or 5 that we thought were really making just really great. There's a lot of people doing kind of port styled stuff. There's things that are Madeirized like this. There's this
Dusk is delicious is the only word I can really say for it.
It's funny though, yeah. The people that are, if you're a first fill finish kind of guy, if you're like a heavy a heavy finish. It's interesting to watch people gravitate either to one or the other. Usually, like I said earlier, we usually, well, let me back up. So Hack, they got in right before Madeira was protected. They literally have a document from the Portuguese government that allows them to use the term. I think they're one of 5 wineries in the country that can do that. We found them and they weren't really getting a ton of attention. They're down kind of close to Houston. We kind of made an intentional effort to kind of spread the word within the whiskey community of like, hey, you guys have to go out there and buy this stuff. This is fantastic. And they're kind of blowing up. They took on some investors. They're doing some expansion. Things are going good for them. But me and Gabe went down, saw the place, tasted through a bunch of stuff. I think we bought 14 barrels that first time. We had their winemaker up for the release. We got more stuff planned with them. Want to keep going with that. But this is a good example to really, I guess a lot of what we've tasted tonight and a lot of what we release is really we get to distill, we get to blend and release expressions, but most of our folks are really not that different from people on the consumer end. We're a bunch of dorks. We really like this. We get excited about variations. We get excited about subtle changes like under pitching the yeast or pitching 2 yeast, or like, let's try run the stills different a certain day, or run hotter, one colder on the fermentation, whatever. All these and the subtleties of what that does are exciting. So a lot of times when we're working on something else, we just end up wanting to share things we find along the way. Normally we would blend what went into Dusk and Dawn together, and maybe even a third round of filling those barrels and dialing in how much of that finish character do we want. The first time round is obviously most intense. Second's a little bit less. Third is pretty neutral. But yeah, Gabe was kind of took lead on these blends, and he kept working on it. Finally called me in. He's like, they're just not. I don't think they're better together. But it was supposed to be one release, and it was a certain size that we had already kind of committed to go to distribution. And he's like, and I was like, well, just separate them. And he's like, I don't really have the authority to do that. And tell him like, oh, no, it's not one release, it's 2, and both of it, and it's smaller because now we're divvying up the barrels between 2 different labels. And I was like, that's fine. I'll call whoever. I'll smooth it out. But it is a fun look for people who would rarely get to see what the first fill and second fill are like, because it usually is going to ended up blended together. But yeah, just to share them kind of standing on their own.
Oddly enough, I feel like the second fill really shows more the Madeira character with the whiskey. Alex, you're muted.
Sorry.
We're on Zoom. How is that happening?
I think I clicked it. So you prefer Dawn over Dusk?
No. I prefer Dusk over Dawn.
Dusk over Dawn. Okay, yeah. So yeah, you prefer the first fill over the second.
I thought Dusk was the second fill.
No,
Dusk is the first fill. Dawn is the.
Okay, yeah, I prefer the first fill.
Yeah. That's like the confusing and fun thing is that when you look at the history of the vessel, there was Madeira in it, and then we put malt in it, and then we put
No. That malt would be the first refill, obviously. Yeah. No. I just got confused. I thought you were talking about Dawn as the first refill and Dusk as the second refill.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, that's the Dawn is, I guess, the second refill, and Dusk is the first refill.
Yes.
Again, this is like the beauty and the conundrum of the kind of exploration of cask maturation, and that the life that you continue to see with these barrels, especially at Balcones, where again we do see lots of crazy temperature swings. We will sometimes see just an amazing amount of cask contribution. Whether it is from wine or tannins or kind of going back to the conversation we were talking about, those European oak barrels with single malter. They're some of my favorite too, because they're familiar, but still like slightly esoteric. And you think about then French oak, where it's so tannic and dark fruit that it can be like a big shock to the palate in a fun way, right? I mean, I think everybody loves Froke, but it's really cool to see these side by side, and I'm really glad that they ended up being kind of these side by side releases. Similar looking, label art here, and if anybody, you can kind of see it behind me. Most of our labels are pretty dark and subtle, and These are
lots of black, lots of
lighter.
vibrant colors that pop off of that black though.
Yeah. The gold and the gold foil always pops off quite nicely. But these, Jerez, who designs all of our label art and color schemes and everything, took a little bit of a risk and went a little bit lighter. And I think people have gravitated towards them. They're really nice. The gold, shines quite nicely, but they sit together really well, theoretically. If I'm doing it,
I think
holding
it
it
pulls
right.
the
But
attention.
yeah, it's nice. Dawn and dusk.
We were
Hold on,
overdue for
Jerez.
a nice like pink lavender kind of vibe,
Yeah.
We were
Here we
overdue.
are.
So on the topic of cask maturation, let's move over to the Dremer's Tequila cask. That I guess I'm the only one that has.
I think
I can remember it. I wonder, I've got my boxes of Dremer's crap right here. I wonder if I've got it any left. I
I'm the
literally,
only one who just has a bunch of random Dremer samples.
yeah, I've got like 4 boxes on my table. No, that's not it. But not surprisingly, my very extra old Fitz bottled in 68, 69. I finished that. There's nothing in there.
Yeah.
What else do I got? I know I've got it somewhere.
Yeah, my bottle is somewhere else. I do love that barrel though. I think I know where it's at. I'm gonna walk away for a second and go grab it.
Do it.
Because
I thought I did, but I don't know.
While you're doing that, Jared, let's talk about head distiller versus master distiller. These all your bottles have your signature in gold that says Jared Himstedt, head distiller, which I like. The master distiller from I've heard from a bunch of people, it's just marketing, and several people who are master distillers, and no disrespect to them, they're often on the road more than they are at the distillery, actually distilling.
Right. I mean, yeah, I know a lot of people that fit that bill, and it's kind of frustrating and sad. But yeah, the master distiller role is largely the you're a brand ambassador. There's no real good formal. I mean, obviously you've done WSET. There are some spirits training things you can do. Institute of Brewing and Distilling, obviously.
Yeah, IBD has suggests
there's colleges that have their programs. Harriet Watt, UC Davis, places like
University
that.
of Kentucky has one, I believe.
Yeah, there's the Moonshine University. So there's more accredited type programs coming up, but there's not really industry standard just ways for deciding that. So yeah, it's a weird thing for me. I don't feel comfortable with the master thing. I don't feel like I'm a master of much. Also, I had one of the things I thought in an alternate universe, I'm somewhere doing this, but I thought I was going to be a potter, and especially with some parts of fine arts, it's a little more obvious that there's kind of this progression that you go through. But traditionally, the master and the apprentice, the relationship there and the transition from apprentice to master would be if you could lay out your work and no one could tell the difference. Even the master himself wouldn't be able to tell the difference between which was his work and which was the apprentice's work. So so now you're a master. So you are no longer learning from me. You've mastered the craft, and you may immediately decide, well, I don't want to make what I've been making. But it's about working on the technical side of being capable of making whatever is asked of you. And obviously, like you said, there's no formal way that this gets decided. I do think in general, I always joke that I don't think I'm nearly gray enough or old enough to be a master. But even if that's ever something that's bestowed on you, I would think that would be something that would be kind of some sort of consensus amongst your peers, or in your industry.
Let's go back in time.
Yeah.
To Balcones' founding. Chip Tate was the founder, and he was like the head distiller at the founding, right?
Yep. Just the two of us. I was a production manager. There was no production and there was no one to manage, but
I was going to ask when you came on board, but it was you and Chip from the beginning. Okay.
Yeah, me and Chip, and then one investor, Steve Germer, who was a in-law of a friend kind of situation. Great dude. He's still involved, still pretty active with the company. Yeah, but then, of course, we spent the first 10 months or so just building our equipment and gutting the building and kind of putting a new roof on and bricking up the stills and all that stuff. So, yeah, what a weird ride. I mean, if I think people who, I guess the current term, the punk scene, it was always DIY, and that's kind of like, I feel like co-opted now for like people that flip houses or something, which is frustrating to me. But I guess everyone's saying makers these days. But I think there's some people that are just put together that way where like, if you enjoy something, you're going to try your hand at it. I mean, Alex does a lot of woodwork, or when he has time, he does. There's a little bit of that
ethos. A little leather work.
Yeah. There's a little bit of that ethos kind of across the company where we've got people that have really, Tommy's our distillery manager, and he's like an amazing bread maker, and he started out roasting coffee, and he's in charge of our beer program, and he's like very accomplished technically when it comes to brewing. And like, I fix a lot of bikes, and I wish I was doing pottery more. We got a lot of musicians. So it's like all of this stuff really, there's really not any hard line between where those things overlap and the things you can learn in different disciplines and different fields. Those lessons and the things you pick up along the way are absolutely relevant, kind of across the board. But in general, we're the kind of, I just think there's part of Balcones culture is get in and get your hands dirty. And it's a really weird thing. I can't remember ever thinking like, oh, we should start a distillery and that's weird. It was like, I've been drinking a ton of single malt, absolutely in love with it. I have a friend that is. We got another friend who's willing to put some money in it. Like, why would you not? Like, that's like the most obvious next step is to get your hands dirty and start making it yourself. And at minimum, you learn a lot about it, and this thing that you love and you enjoy, you've gained a different level of appreciation for it because you've made some. But to go from making tiny batches, I mean, no, we did not ever make tiny batches in the garage. That would be highly illegal. But
you didn't Wozniak and Jobs it? Make it work in your garage?
But luckily, though, that the focus has still stayed the same, I think, to this day. And I think Alex can attest to it. And really, if you ever talk to anybody that works here.
So how did you go from, production manager to head distiller? I'm assuming it was after the departure of Chip, right? Yeah.
Pretty well documented, public, not fun phase in our history. But
we're not going to go into that.
Sure. But Chip left and is to pursue his own stuff, and had a lot of conversations with all the crew trying to figure out what happens next. And we decided that we were going to just plod along and keep going and kind of stay true to the course. And we've had a lot of fun doing it and got to try a lot. It's crazy to be, coming up on like 13 years now and it still feels like in some ways it feels like we just started. It's kind of like when your kids start getting older and you're like, man, in some ways.
Do you want to feel old?
Do I want to feel old? No, I don't want to feel old. Why?
Because 13 years ago, I was 15.
Oh, okay. No, it's cool. There's guys that work at the distillery. Every once in a while, someone will razz me about like that I didn't spend all of my life in Waco and like that I'm not really from here. But then it turns out that when I moved here, they weren't born yet. And so I can still rub that in like, well, I've still been here longer than you. You've lived your whole life here, but I came here like a year before you were born or whatever. No, I don't mind. I don't mind being the old dude. I don't want to feel old though.
So let's jump back into the whiskey. And actually, Joe asked a really good question over on YouTube. Joe Battaglia asked, is there a particular finishing barrel type that you haven't yet used and hoping to use for a future release?
Yep. Tons. So there's a ton of weird stuff that would take time we don't have. But in that exploration of Texas dessert wine makers, it sucks because dessert wine's not a huge category. So those barrels, they get used a ton. So people don't let go of them regularly. So we're trying to work with some people on kind of a barrel rotation program so we can get barrels in and out of their program, their dessert wine program more regularly, so we can get them, even if they go back after and get another round. We're talking to a few people about laying down some dessert wine specifically for us. We also have our beer and wine license with no intention of making wine, but it allows us to sell wine on site and use wine in cocktails and all that stuff. But it does mean that we could actually work on some wine with someone and collaborate on some
that'd be pretty cool.
Some dessert wine that we specifically want to get laid down.
Anything coming from Mizunara?
No, we have not played with that. Ironically, it would make a lot of sense. There's a company trying to put in some bullet train stuff in Texas. There's a line that is proposed to go from Dallas to Houston. I haven't kept up with how the progress is going on that.
Yeah.
It's an American-based company, Japanese technology, and one of the things they were talking about, this was years ago, we had talked about doing a release specifically for the train to do a Texas-grown barley, so like our High Plains, but aged in Mizunara, that would be available on the train to kind of celebrate like Texas and Japan. And my dad was Air Force. I was born in Okinawa, so I feel like, if I ever get the full, Japanese sleeve, I've got at least like the tiniest amount of credibility for making that.
See the sleeve that you got working going on so far.
But no, we haven't messed around with Mizunara. In looking at all this Texas stuff, we did find a bunch of weird things. So the guy's last name is Mitchell, and I can't remember his first name, but up in Denison is the viticulture school, and TV Munson was one of the guys. Iron Root talks about this history way better than I do, and it's the area they're in. But a lot of the phylloxera stuff that almost decimated the French wine market, and the guys that were doing stuff up in North Texas were the ones that saved and kind of had all this saved rootstock that they then sent back.
Wait, are you telling me that they have pre-phylloxera rootstock or wine?
They sent it back, yeah. Like France kind of repopulated with this stuff that this
my God,
the viticulture center up in North Texas had saved. Anyway, long story short, one of the guys he's dead now, but he's got
dead now.
He's got a sherry Solera up near the guys up near Denison Sherman area. He's got the oldest sherry Solera in the country, and it's been going, I want to say, since 74, 76, something like that.
Whoa.
But of course, it's tiny. They never bottle it. They're not going to get rid of the barrels. But those are some of the things we found out, like in trying to track down this Texas dessert wine thing. To get back to the guy's question, we've laid down a bunch of stuff in Sauterne. We've got some releases coming later that we've kind of heavily invested on. Sauterne finishing for a specific thing that we've got coming up later this year that I'm super in love with. But the world is full of really crazy dessert wine traditions. And there's a guy named Gilles Dumangin. I'd have to spell it out. Hopefully my French pronunciation was good enough where you can figure that out. But he's a champagne producer, really tiny, beautiful, like family champagne producer. Wins awards all the time with his champagne. He approached us about getting some whiskey to finish in casks and sell in Europe. He went and got his license. So he did independent bottling in France. And we've done a couple of releases with him that the whiskey got shipped, he finished it and then sold it there. But there is a dessert wine version of champagne, and like nobody knows this. I didn't know it until this guy who makes champagne showed up at our door and walked us through it, brought me a bottle. But ratafia is this dessert wine derivative of the champagne process, and it's killer. But also he's a small operation, and like even trying to wrestle 2 to 4 barrels out of him is proven a little bit difficult. Not because he doesn't want to. He's a good friend and he's all about it. But he's done it, so he basically beat us to it. So he's done Balcones release that he finished in ratafia barrels and sold in the French market.
Wow.
He was nice enough to send me some. But so yeah, the world is just full of crazy. And then of course in Texas, so we have another project coming up later, very soon, in the next few months, that I can't name, but it's another finished Texas barley finished in Texas dessert wine. But it was orange muscat base, but then they Madeirized it. So it was literally, when me and Gabe went to pick the barrels up, it was, the barrels are all sitting outside and they were getting dumped, and it was 108 in August or whatever. So varieties combined. I mean, it's really not too different from what's been happening with Texas whiskey or just craft whiskey in general for the last few years. Does orange muscat wine get made? Sure. Does it get made into dessert wine? Not that often. And then there's this Portuguese tradition that we're gonna basically bake the barrels, and we're gonna the maturation is gonna take place very hot. Like, okay, let's just throw all that together. Okay, why not? So none of the components are bizarre, but the final, you piece the thing together, and what you end up with at the end is very unique, and it was really nice.
We are running out of time, so I'm gonna pull us back towards the whiskey. This is actually my first tasting of the Dremer's cask in many months, and it's just insanely rich butterscotch.
This is I think what is most exciting about this is that it's seemingly so unlike Balcones' profile, but I think it's actually maybe in some ways so like Balcones to produce something like this, because it is so aromatic and so dense and robust. There is a lot of really rich earth tones to it. There's a lot of blue corn. There's a lot of what you would see. I was like, oh man, yeah, tequila. But to me, it starts going in towards like lime zest. And did you find some?
I did.
Nice. Oh, there you go.
All right.
But
Alex, I'm 100% with you. It doesn't fit the standard Balcones profile, but it fits Balcones' ethos of, let's just fucking try this.
Yeah. It's kind of, again, I think one of the things is that folks definitely know us as we produce whiskey, and then a lot of folks that really know us, we produce a lot of single malt. But then I think folks that really, really know us, I think those that again really, really know us outside of just whiskey, single malt, and American whiskey, they know that we're kind of an adopter and a purveyor of flavor and flavor experiences. And I think this does it surprisingly extremely well. And there's this chalky kind of limestone, almost like effervescent, like slight small bubble effervescent, to speak of like champagne, quality to it that is so fun. And I love this barrel. I'm glad I was able to find a bottle. I've been very stingy with this. I know Sam, you said yours is almost gone. I've been very stingy, and this is.
I have maybe a pour left in here. If I wanted to, just finish it off tonight, I easily could.
I'm assuming it's all sold, right? I mean, I don't know.
Actually, I think there's still some bottles left.
Really?
Oh, maybe Charlie has some bottles.
I'm gonna be real pretentious with my glassware choice, just because I didn't want to get up and go back into the other room and get more Glencairn. So I've got my whiskey exchange.
Your blender's glass, yeah.
Very pretentious.
I'm a blender.
Blender's glass.
I was just gonna use this, but I thought this was too. It was too serious for the mood.
Too highbrow.
I agree. Way too highbrow.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Too serious. Like, what's wrong with you, dude?
Too hipster, actually. I think it's just too hipster. Red Solo Cup. Come on, man.
Damn it. Yeah, okay, I'll just go see through.
What do you got? A PBR in there or something?
Probably. Or a Balcones lager.
Wouldn't it be a Lone Star?
No, so here's the thing, Sam. Crazy thing. Most people don't know this. We now, Jared kind of alluded to it, but we make our own beer now. So. What's more hipster, I guess, than drinking our own beer? Or is that not hipster? I don't know. But we make our own beer now. We've got
so now I have another reason. I mean, I've been meaning to come to Waco for 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah.
Every time I'm in Texas, I never remember to plan to time to come up to Waco. I usually have to go back to work after I go to Austin for the whiskey program out in, the Wizard Academy.
Yep.
But you guys have your own beer, and I need to come to the distillery to hang out and shoot the shit with you guys in person. I think I need to just plan a trip to Waco, have Waco as a destination, Austin or Houston, as a stop along the way.
Yeah, are you doing the Bastards Ball whenever that was? October?
No.
Okay. Well,
I don't do Bastards Ball. I don't do Whiskey Tribe.
Yeah.
Nothing against them, just not my cup of tea.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, there is, and again, I know we're kind of just chatting.
Eric asked a question I was wondering actually real quick. He said, "Are we going to be able to get the beer out of Texas anytime soon?"
Oh gosh.
We're not getting it. We're not getting it outside of Waco anytime soon. So this is the beer is a hometown. We're not opposed to it that changing if there was enough demand and there was a good reason to do it. But the only reason we started
draft only, or there are cans and bottles that you can take home from the distillery.
Draft only so far. We've talked about hand bottling some, maybe like when we do barrel aged stouts, or if we have some mixed culture stuff that we might do some hand bottling.
So what I'm hearing is they need to send someone up to Waco with a growler.
We can do,
sent over to me.
We can do growlers and crowlers, and we've talked about even getting a nicer canning machine where we can just do little one-offs and like have some stuff kind of pre-canned for people to take. But we're not going through distribution. That it wasn't the original goal. It's a 5-barrel system.
Tiny.
Yeah, it's enough for Waco and for us. So we've got 3 or 4 bars around town that carry stuff, and then we usually have at least 4 things on tap. We're about to jump that up to like 6 to 8 beers on tap at any given moment. But it was meant to just be for on site and for our hometown. So
yeah, but it's to me, especially because I've been with Balcones just on 5 years, but before this I worked in the craft beer business, and it's really cool to kind of see this come full circle, considering, the original inception of Balcones, I guess, really was on the idea of wanting to make beer, and of course evolved into Balcones and then what we know of today. But the evolution of that is knowing that Balcones produces really high proof spirit, still very inviting and flavorful spirit, but the beers for the most part are these really clean, but also grain forward lagers, pilsners, exploring cool things like some like what one of the recent things, and I can't remember the name, but a red IPA and Czech pills, and just very inviting. And I think kind of we've been throwing around like patio pounder type stuff because we're drinking high proof spirits all day. It's really hot. You want to go outside with your friends.
You want a really nice crushable beer, yeah.
I mean, that said, there's probably a barrel aged imperial stout on almost all the time too, though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So how long have you guys been doing the beer?
A little bit over a year.
Okay, I was gonna say, how did that work with Winston as your national ambassador, this giant beer nerd?
Yeah. Yeah, no.
How he never talked about it before, but it explains why. But he's been gone from the company a little over a year.
Yeah, we haven't been doing it that long. It was a long time coming. We have. I don't think we have anybody in the distillery that's ever worked in distilling before, but we have a bunch of people that have worked in beer before. And Chip and I both together and separately had tried to open breweries before the whiskey idea ever really came about. So it really is kind of full circle. If it hadn't been for home brewing and all that, I don't know that Balcones would exist. So to kind of go back around to that. But Tommy's extremely proficient and technically, just impeccable. And we've kind of treated it the same way we treat the whiskey. It's not like, here's something.
That's her name over at Crowded Barrel.
Yeah. There's in fact, that took a while. It's the same way we do with the whiskey, but basically if somebody is fascinated with a certain beer style, then sure, let's mess with it. But let's not look around and just be we've got to have a porter because whatever. So we brewed some weird stuff, British, we've done some milds and we've done, whatever. But it's been a lot of fun.
Move over to the Crowded Barrel Alliance series.
Yep.
This is 120 proof, bottle number 398. 36 months aged, and Jared Himstedt. Is it Himstedt?
Yeah, I think if I was German, or I was back in the day, a couple generations back, it would be Himstedt. But yeah, I just say Himstedt.
Himstedt is a master distiller.
What they call me? That's bullshit. I gotta let Daniel know. That's ridiculous. Yeah, the story with this one, I do really like this barrel, but Emma came up. I don't remember when this was. Basically, Emma and Daniel reached out and wanted to see if Emma could just come hang out and do some blending with us, just for her own, just kind of experience and exposure, and kind of see our process and just walk through it with us. And I was actually pretty busy that week, and I wasn't in the room much. So I think she hung out with Gabe a lot. And but we were working on Mirador at the time. So almost everything we had out on the table was refill ex-bourbon malt. And so they worked on the blend together, and then she went back, and then we finished it up the next week. But apparently she got back, and she had written down a number of a barrel in looking at them that she really liked. And Daniel called back and said, "Hey, you think we could get this barrel that she really got excited about?" It's like, yeah, sure, why not? So it's a fun one in some ways that it's not the process of like a barrel pick. Like it wasn't the normal. It was a little bit of a weird kind of trajectory to.
Yeah,
it's a really fun thing. I mean, we all sit down on barrel picks, and it's fine. But to watch someone actually have like a very personal, like this wasn't even a barrel that I don't think was even like a front runner for the blend or anything. It just was something about it that there was like to watch someone actually have a very personal experience and then be in a position because of what they do for work to like, I mean, basically vanity project, like cool. Daniel's willing to spend money and everybody is going to support buying it, which basically just allows her to get this because she wanted it, you know, and it's fun to watch people get excited about stuff like that.
So the Alliance series, I actually really don't know much about it. They're basically just taking Texas whiskey and being an independent bottler.
Yeah. I don't know that I don't know if they've all been single barrels or not. I really don't know. Some of them may have been blends.
I have an iron root at home that I'm going to talk, that I need to be at the licorice. I need to get the Licorice Brothers on here to talk iron root. Yeah,
so I guess they've got Eleanor, which is the sourced stuff. I don't know what the names are going to be. I love Eleanor. For the stuff they're going to produce will be a different brand name, and then the Alliance series is it's not limited just to Texas. They did a Wyoming release. They have some MGP.
That's cool.
So yeah, it's not just Texas, but the Alliance series.
Obviously, I haven't been out there in the last couple of years.
Yeah, right. But that's just all the stuff that they didn't.
I think the last time I was out there is almost 3 years ago now. I need to make a yearly pilgrimage out to Texas. I think go visit them at the Crowded Barrel and the Academy and the Vault. Then, go visit Nickel City, Austin, Nickel City, Fort Worth. Then you just skip Houston and just go right to Waco.
Perfect. There you go.
You ought to come down one year for the Houston Social. It's pretty bonkers.
The what?
Yeah, the Houston Bourbon Social.
Yeah,
that sounds fun.
It rivals national shows. I mean, it's a bonkers. There's a ton of people, and it's a fun one. You got to figure out when that's happening and get you down for that.
I think it's either November 6th or 7th this year.
I saw the tickets just
right for my birthday.
Oh,
that'd be a fun birthday trip.
Yeah.
There you go. You'll be 23. Yeah, perfect.
You'll be what?
I'll be 29 in November.
Wow. So much life ahead of you.
I genuinely believe you would have a fantastic time because it's got a lot of, and again, we obviously love Whiskey Fest. We're planning to go this year. We've been almost every year. But it's very similar in the nature of like what you're going to taste and experience. There's a handful of master classes. It's a really fun experience. It's in Houston. So you can fly in and out of there, but there's a lot of great folks involved, a lot of Texas whiskeys. Usually Iron Root and us, we always, at least the last few years, we've always gone to dinner together, and our booths, usually they kind of sequester the Texas whiskey guys all together into a big cool room. So it's a fun time. I think
it sounds awesome.
Yeah, and even more global stuff. Richard Seal was last year.
Very cool. I have him coming on in August.
Yeah, he's great. I don't even know if they were pouring. I don't think they were, but he was in for something.
Just about our time. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. For obviously all the hard work you guys are doing, putting out some fantastic liquid from Balcones. Thank you to yourselves and to Barbara for arranging for the bottle lineage. And we will talk more in the coming future. Jared, I'm going to take you up on trying and find Juntos.
I got one for you. Not a problem. Remind me. Send me an email and remind me, and I'll get one to you.
Hello to our friend Joe Van Nem, who just showed up. He said he's sorry he arrived late. Joe, we're actually just wrapping up Again, I'm going to say it again. Balcones is fantastic, but I think it needs a little bit of oxidation time to breathe a little bit for my palate. Because when I first had the Crown and Barrel Alliance release, it was very bizarre, very not what I expected from Balcones, almost more like a rum. But now that it's opened up, the bottle's about a little more than a quarter empty. All that air's had time to replace some of that alcohol. It's really fantastic dram. So, gentlemen, again, cheers. Thank you so much. And I'll see you all next week.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks for having us.